streaming services. They're kind of like the heroin of modern media. They were super cool and fun in the beginning, but now they are slowly ruining everyone's life. I mean, there are just some overarching reasons why streaming services suck that I don't even have to go that deep into. Number one, too many options. Now,
that's how you combat piracy. Start fucking prosecuting people for stealing.
They could send piracy back to the Dark Ages by reconcentrating their content onto a single easy platform. But at the moment, that would probably be Netflix, which a company like Disney would obviously not be willing to go along with after investing so much in their own service. If they keep competing though, they are just going to make the experience worse for everybody and probably lose more ground to the high seas.
Today's episode will be on piracy. How did piracy, illegal streaming of TV, movies, and sports, live sports, win the streaming war? What does the recent leak of Avatar: The Last Airbender, some of you may know, some of you may not, but that was a film, a big film from Paramount that was supposed to come out in October, leaked in April. How did we get to a space where the streaming war was won by piracy? But not only that, it seems to be evolving. Getting films before their release date, months before their release date, this is very dangerous and dubious spaces for us to be in, not just as consumers, but also the studios too. Let's explore all of that and more in today's episode. Okay, so before we get into all of that, please do me one massive favor. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. This channel only wins and only does well if you engage, subscribe, and put comments into the comment section. This channel needs you way more than you realize. And your subscriptions do me a massive favor. So please just subscribe. It takes 2 seconds. Thank you so much.
They bought it. He's gonna steal it. They're watching it. He's waiting for it. They're having a great time. While he's just wasting his. They're getting the experience of a real DVD.
You just killed a helicopter with a car! How's that bullets?
He's just not getting it.
The interesting thing about the streaming war or piracy is that streaming was supposed to kill piracy. However, we're now in an era where piracy is more rampant than ever. Things like IPTV, where you have paid for subscription services that rival what we have with subscription services, cable networks, streaming services. How did we get there? It's very important to look at the origins of this. Piracy in its origins was bootleg DVDs. If you remember, if you're from the UK, maybe it happened in the US as well, Canada, there would be a man in the barber shop or down the road or just anywhere really selling you DVDs, bootleg DVDs. They would have it would be in like a plastic container, not plastic, or plastic thing with the printout of the movie poster, and you get the DVD. You'd have to write on the DVD what it was sometimes because it was just a blank DVD. Now, of course, with streaming, Blu-ray, things started to evolve. That started to become more in the past. Then we had the BitTorrent era.
The 2010s were the golden age of piracy. BitTorrent accounted for 1/3 of all internet traffic. LimeWire had more monthly users than Facebook, and the Pirate Bay was the only video store in town where you were sure to find what you were looking for. Hypothetically, of course.
The BitTorrent era or the Pirate Bay era, that was a very interesting era where you would download your files. You would download these illegal, well, they weren't, let me not say illegal, but they were copyright protected. And you could download your movies, you could download your TV series. However, the interface wasn't as user-friendly. It had storage issues. Newer releases had a massive issue where the quality was sometimes terrible, but often bad. So you just prefer to go to the cinema, especially for a film that you really wanted to watch. Often it was the bootleg era, especially. That was an era where it was just a cheaper DVD. So it would affect the DVD sales, but not necessarily the theatrical releases. TV shows also were much harder to binge because, first of all, they weren't as accessible on the bootleg. If you were going on BitTorrent or Pirate Bay to download them, those files were massive. I don't know if about you, but those files could be up to 10 to 20 gigabytes. At the time, that was a lot. So it wasn't as convenient as it is now. Also during that era, and it's important to look at it from this standpoint, was just before that, there was the era of downloading music. A lot of music downloads came from illegal downloads. I don't know about you, but I used LimeWire a lot back then.
At its peak, 95% of all music downloads were pirated because it had become cheaper and, above all else, an easier way to fill up large digital libraries that were being made possible by cheap digital storage. But then, it just stopped. Since 2012, the internet has gotten faster, storage has gotten cheaper, and people have become more comfortable with computers, which should have just accelerated a growth trend. But it didn't. Since 2015, peer-to-peer file sharing has collapsed in popularity. And you might think you already know why. Streaming services like Spotify and Netflix were just a better, easier, and safer way to access content. Music streaming, by comparison, is decent. There are multiple services, but almost all of them have almost all of the music that you would possibly be looking for. As a result, nobody really bothers to pirate songs anymore, which is particularly impressive when you remember that just 15 years ago, 95% of music was being downloaded illegally. Artists have not been thrilled about the lower revenue they have got from streaming versus physical album sales, but most of them still go along with it because even a small share of something is better than most of their music being accessed for free.
But streaming came in. It centralized things. With music, Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal had a decent run, I guess. It popped its head out in it. But that killed it. It homogenized things. It centralized it. And Netflix sort of challenged that model. No longer would you need to download and waste so much space on your laptops or PCs. No longer did you need to know the title of the film, maybe download the wrong film, which happened oftentimes. I have a very funny story when I downloaded Shank once downloaded the wrong thing entirely. It was crazy. It was a gay film that I downloaded. It was supposed to be Shank with John Boyega, and it was that.
Say that again?
It was a gay film.
This nigga's a homosexual.
Traumatized me for life. Not saying gay people traumatized me, just wasn't what I was expecting people. But like I was saying, Netflix centralized it. It simplified this into its most basic form. You no longer had to overthink. Then Amazon came in. Again, it started to cost a bit more, but it still wasn't ridiculous. I think those times Netflix would have been $6.99, maybe even $5.99 with a month free trial. Amazon Prime was the same thing, and that's really what locked you in. I remember being very young and Netflix coming in, and I just said, you know what, I'm gonna just watch it on a free trial. And then I just kept paying for it because it was so accessible. I could binge The Only Way is Essex. Yes, that's what I binged. That's what got me into Netflix. The Only Way is Essex. Sharp. But there was so much there. And even the stuff I didn't care about, I just watched because it was available. It simplified things. The ironic thing about Netflix is its model wasn't designed to be what it is today. The model itself was designed to just kind of eat up market share and evolve into something else. Funny enough, Netflix, again, a little back history, started off as a company that would deliver DVDs to your home. And it realized streaming and the internet was powerful, and it evolved into this killing blockbuster. And Netflix inevitably won the piracy war and the streaming war at that period of time because of purely one thing: convenience. It sold you convenience, and people pay for convenience.
Streaming services. They're kind of like the heroin of modern media. They were super cool and fun in the beginning, but now they are slowly ruining everyone's life. I mean, there are just some overarching reasons why streaming services suck that I don't even have to go that deep into. Number one, too many options. Now, I am an American. I enjoy freedom as much as the next red, white, and blue bleeding motherfucker. But when I say freedom, I'm thinking more like three things. Back when Netflix started, you had options like Orange is the New Black, Friends, and The Office. And those were, that's all you needed, really, as a human being. But now, not only does Netflix have more shows than there are grains of sand at the beach, there's also like a million streaming services, and they all just kind of suck. All of them have like one or two good shows, and the rest of it's garbage.
Too many cooks in the kitchen. Fragmentation, greed, really is what brought piracy back to its life, really, without a better word to word it. You now have Amazon Prime, Netflix, Hulu, at one point the WWE Network, Paramount, HBO Plus. There's loads of streaming services out there. Not to talk about that in the UK as well, that we have ITV, BBC iPlayer, 4OD, 5. You have all these platforms that show different sort of TV shows, give you different access to movies as well. And eventually what happened with people is it became confusing. There was too much going on. Often people didn't know when things fell into streaming, where you could watch it, where you can find it. And what happens is people search for convenience. People search for an easier option. Not only was it just confusing, harder to find what you wanted, it also, and cost of living plays a massive part in this, the cost rose up significantly. Yes, things like BBC iPlayer, ITVX, 4OD, they are free. They have a free version of them. But Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime or Prime Videos, Now TV, all have a cost. And that can be anywhere, if you have all of them, to up to 40 to 50 pounds. And with rising costs, you don't want to spend 40 to 50 pounds on just your TV and movie experience. On top of your life amenities, you may reduce it and find other ways to compensate it for your entertainment elsewhere. Like I said, Netflix won because it was centralized. Amazon Prime was a competitor, but not a serious competitor at the time. It won because it was affordable, convenient, and the war started to lose and piracy started to take over because it lost that convenience. You see, the difference here between Spotify and Apple Music and the music industry is that it kept its centralization. It lowered the value of the music. Yes, that's very true. And that's undeniable. However, artists could make it up through touring, through lives, through merch. I'll get onto how the business of movies and TVs can help, and even sports as well can learn from that too. But that loss of centralization sort of is the main crux of the reason why their war was lost to piracy. Lack of convenience and rising cost. Have you ever pirated before? You probably have. I won't be admitting that on camera. Maybe I already did though. The truth is piracy won because, again, like I said, it is convenient. You've seen examples of high-profile people using IPTV streaming services. But it also won for stranger reasons. It has better interfaces, sometimes better customer services. It has a better customer service depending on the IPTV that you use. Minimal buffering, entire libraries, less pop-ups. Huh? You've got to remember, Netflix once upon a time had no ads. And if you know how to do it nowadays, you can watch on a streaming service, an illegal piracy streaming service, something with no ads. How did we get to that space? Let that sink in. The legitimate platform sometimes has more ads than the illegitimate platform. That was all often the trade-off. Now we're in the opposite realm.
Both suck like fuck.
You can now see how we've got into a space where piracy has taken over. Piracy seems to be the evolution of the streaming era.
Things just got out of hand.
One place where the piracy war got worrying, disturbing, was live sports, live things. See, before you had to download it, you had to download the videos, you had to bootleg the DVDs. Streaming was pre-recorded. There's an element of you're gonna lose a little bit to piracy. Now we're in an era where you can watch live sports. It was always threatening, but now interfaces have got better. Less buffering, much less buffering. User-friendly interfaces, like I said earlier, with IPTV, sometimes a better experience. And what's hurting the business, if we talk about the business of sports, in the UK, I'll give you an example. In the UK, we have a 3 p.m. blackout for Premier League games. We have a 3 p.m. blackout for Premier League games so people can go to the stadium more, to encourage people to go and watch the lives more. First of all, the rising ticket costs are extraordinary. It's not something you can just do on a whim. You have to kind of prep months in advance to just go to a game to make sure you've got the right ticket. It's not on a whim. especially for Premier League games. So you can see some of these rules are archaic. They are behind the times. Multiple streaming services. I often don't know where to watch a Champions League game. Now let's go to the American platforms. NBA Pass, NFL Pass, MLB as well. There's so many subscriptions that you need that this can cost up to thousands to have full memberships. And in the case of sports, live sports, which is one of the biggest threats, it's not just convenience that's lost, because some of the live streams aren't the best. It's purely cost. Often there's fights, I don't know where to go. Archaic laws, poor engagement with the audience, lack of clarity has caused a world in which live events, which seemed sacrosanct, seemed safe, to finally be intercepted by piracy. And I often find, and I've been hinting at this throughout the show, or the episode I should say, is that a lot of people's responses are poor. Dana White's was terrible.
We know exactly how to combat piracy. I won't tell you extensively what we do every event, but we go after piracy hard. And you saw a few years ago, we started prosecuting people. That's how you combat piracy. Start fucking prosecuting people for stealing.
Dana, I think he's got a great work ethic. He created a great business platform. I think what he's done with the UFC is the boxing can only marvel at. It's an evolution of what Vince McMahon did. It's been amazing. It has that homogeny. It has that centralization that simplifies the experience for fans. But his take on this was terrible. His take on this was just an absolute joke. It makes me wonder, is he misinformed or just doesn't really care about the issue? Because you can't prosecute.
Shut the fuck up in 2024!
You can't prosecute people because it has one massive issue. They're not often in the same country. Some of these illegal platforms, some of these illegal piracy sites. It's not only is not in the right country, the responses are slow. People put blockers out there, but VPNs help. To quote Marvel's Captain America,
Cut off one head. Two more shall take its place.
You just create multiple. Cut one platform off, multiple come up in its place within quick time. You talk about putting a plaster on a band-aid. That's not even that. It's not even a plaster on a band-aid. It is a water.
You're a clown! Did y'all hear him?
It is such a poor response. The response is too slow. Streaming and piracy, illegal piracy I should say, is far too adaptive. The responses are not proactive enough. It seems to treat this problem as if it's something born in the 1990s, not something of a 2020 modern day issue that can adapt quick. There is no fundamental understanding in the responses of how the internet works. And that takes me to Avatar, the recent leaks of Avatar, The Last Airbender, a film that I think could have done really well. It could have been Demon Slayer. It could have been even, dare I say, K-pop Demon Hunter. If you've watched it, I may have. It just shows that studios I don't want to say they don't understand the business, because that's too arrogant of me to say, but it feels like, and it's just a feeling, that they don't fully understand their audience. And I say that because the audience would have eaten up that film. They would have loved that film. The cinematography, the artwork was amazing. And how it was just sitting on their archives for so long is one of the reasons why it leaked. Avatar The Last Airbender was leaked onto the internet, and a film that was supposed to come out in October was leaked and watched by millions in April. And it shows to me that piracy is no longer just quick to cut you at its legs, it's proactive. Now there are, again, set of circumstances that are unique. They took Avatar The Last Airbender from a theatrical release to just streaming. I don't know why. I don't know if it performed badly in focus groups or test audiences. I don't see how it could have, although I do feel like the film was a bit short, allegedly.
You just got caught! It's official!
But that tells you, and it shows to me that there's now a fight to control your content. There's a fight to control your IP, that these piracy sites are now They're jumping ahead. And theaters, movie studios need to be more proactive in their approach. I'm going to run a segment called Learn from the Past. What do we learn from the past? The bootlegging era, the piracy era reminds me of something of the prohibition. I don't know what is going on with my sentences today. It's all over the place. However, it reminds me of prohibition in the early 1900s, where in America, alcohol was made illegal. It was looked at as an experiment. It was looked at as a mass experiment by the president of the time, something very unwise. And what came from it? Legal loopholes, as I've mentioned earlier, that's in piracy as well. And the demand. Because you make something illegal doesn't remove the demand. And what the government did eventually is realize legalizing it, but putting restrictions, making sure they created a better product, pretty much washed out prohibition and the illegal marketing or the illegal sales of alcohol at the time, and cigarettes as well. People no longer wanted the bad product. They would just rather go to the legitimate one. And if you look at a lot of the data into this, it shows that people prefer the legitimate source if it's even available, convenient, and makes sense. So one thing you can take from prohibition and prohibition law is don't do experiments on your public. That's noble experiments is what they called it. Never really works. Also, you want to make piracy irrelevant, unnecessary, not necessarily illegal. That's what we got from Spotify and the music, and that's what we got with prohibition as well. How do you get to that? Return to the thing I kept saying, convenience and value. Theatre, let's go to music. Music still makes money, and artists can still make good money from their lives. Theatre, live sports as well, far too costly. Make it more family friendly. The beauty of cinema back in the day was it was a family experience, a dating experience. Make it more appealing in that sense. People are trying, companies are trying. There are deals out there, but I think there's not an intentional approach to make this more of an experience. Filmmakers as well, and film studios, stop going for the cheap CGI option. If you're gonna do a theatrical release, make it something worth being in theaters.
Asshole. What do you say to the people that say Hollywood is dead? It's too expensive to make movies out here.
I mean, sadly, there is some truth to that. Like going back to what we kind of talked about initially with like trying to find ways where, you know, because like where I started in this business was like before Good Will Hunting was, you know, in a bunch of very low budget, like $250,000 movie or, you know, $1 million movie, which to me, that seemed like a lot of money. You got to go get $1 million from somebody. That's one of the things that has made it really hard to get theatrical. That and the fact that people now go, this movie looks good, but I'll see it when it comes on streaming, you know? And so those two factors are really what's caused, you know, why you see mostly the movies that come out in theaters are, you know, Avengers and or, you know, Avatar or whatever it is, you know, and a movie with that Ryan Coogler, who's a huge commercial director, and Michael B. Jordan, who's a huge movie star. That's considered kind of a risk because it's not like a sequel.
Right.
Theaters as well, make the experience a genuine experience. Everyman shouldn't be the only place in the UK where you get a genuine cinema experience. Don't get me wrong, they are trying, but we need to really work on the experience. Live sports as well, they're complicated. It's rising costs. That's what's killing the business. Rising costs, empty stadium seats, all hurting the business. WrestleMania, by the time this video comes out, will be about maybe a week or two away. And they were selling tickets on the cheap in order to fill out the stadium. That does happen sometimes, but rising cost is what's hurting live events. And we shouldn't be in a space where it's just not only more affordable, more convenient for to watch live sports, but it's also the better experience. Leaving stadiums, leaving big gigs, leaving live sports can be a drag. Leaving Wembley can take hours. I get it, it's a massive stadium, but sometimes the creation of these massive stadiums just creates congestion upon congestion. You can only do so much. The architects try their best to ensure that crowd flow makes sense, but if that's the payoff, can we compromise and ensure the experience is something that's unforgettable? That way, live is protected in some shape or form, and the theatre experience and the live going to the cinema experience isn't lost. That is the biggest choker on the neck of the studios at this present moment in time. Yes, there are some external factors like COVID that they haven't really recovered truly from its pre-COVID highs, or post-COVID, it's post-COVID lows. They haven't truly recovered since then. Post-COVID, it was terrible and it hasn't really grown. I don't want you to watch this episode and think I'm saying that piracy is a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing. But I understand that it's a symptom of the problem, of sort of greed of the streaming networks and the studios, but also the lack of foresight. Perhaps people could see it coming, but it doesn't feel like they're very proactive in dealing with it. I would love to see more director cuts on streaming services as well, or more cinema cuts in the theaters. Then you have your own original streaming cuts as well. That would be a really cool way to get around sometimes the necessity of why should I go to the cinema? But like I said, there's a lack of proactive understanding of dealing with the problem of piracy. Too many options, rising costs, poor experience, confusion when it comes to live sports. Often, I say this again, I don't know where half these things are being shown. And it's starting to put it into a place where it's not necessarily irrelevant, but it's a good second option, sometimes a preferable first option. And you don't want that to always be in the place when you're genuinely trying to make money and sustain this business, because it will eventually cut its own legs off if this continues. And I do believe that piracy should be looked at not as a problem, but as a competitor. And when you look at it as a competitor, realize that it needs to be made irrelevant. Make your product more beneficial, and that will truly kill piracy. It's too difficult to govern this with laws. And I ask you this question, how do we get to a space where the piracy experience, at times, not all the time, is sometimes more homogenized, straightforward than their own legal streaming service? How?
What?
And that leaves me with this final point, that the biggest threat to streaming isn't even piracy, it's its own greed. It's its own reflection. And with that, I give you my leave. I wish you a good holiday. And I'll see you on the next... Hold on. What is underneath my nose? I'm out.